Hi, welcome to the Manifesting Miracles podcast. I'm your host, Carol Hasbrouck, the Miracle Lady, and author of the book 10,000 Miles of Miracles, now available on Amazon. On this show, we uncover ways to follow your inner guidance system so you can live your most authentic and fantastic life. Our mission is to help you learn how to differentiate between your ego thoughts and your true, authentic higher self, which can lead you to your life purpose, on new adventures, and even to new callings. You can finally live the life you desire and the life you deserve. I have a very special guest today. She's a friend of mine. She's a fellow pickleball player. We get out there and hit the ball together. And her name is Keyla Billiter, and she is going to share with us an amazing story and perhaps stories of how her inner guidance system has led her on journeys beyond her wildest dreams. So welcome, Keyla.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be a part of your podcast called Manifesting Miracles. That's apropos since I'm an avid practitioner and researcher of manifestation and changing my life and changing my personality. I listen a lot to Joe Dispenza and Andrew Huberman and Lewis Howell and a bunch of those influencers and motivational speakers. So this is an excellent podcast. I'm really excited about the name and what you're doing here. So it's an honor to be with you today talking about inner guidance system.
Thanks, Keyla. That's wonderful. I had the pleasure of being at a picnic with Keyla, I don't know, maybe a month or so ago, and she told me this story, and I said, I have to have you on my podcast. And we arranged for that to happen. So Keyla will just start with that story, if that's okay with you. She had gone, tell us about your journey to Sedona.
Sure, that's wonderful. I'm just going to be very transparent. I really don't know how much I can say or can't say on this. So I'm just going to be candid and speak naturally from just being inspired. I'm going to use my inner guidance system here.
Good.
And perfect. So, I feel it's important for me to preface that my whole inspiration for going to Sedona and taking this trip, really, I call it a sojourn, is that the trip was intended to be a couples trip. And so, I was in an emotionally dysregulated, unhealthy relationship with someone who was an alcohol and substance abuser. And, I have that in my background. And actually, that was part of the pursuit. And the catalyst for this trip is like I started to get sober. As a matter of fact, this is like a milestone month for me. On March 11th, a couple days ago, I had my 50th birthday, and
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Also going to have 2 years sober on the 26th of this month.
Yay!
Yeah, it's awesome. It feels so good. I feel like I have like a new lease on life, and it's amazing. So, in March, when I started pursuing that 2 years ago, the trip had been kind of in the ethos of our communication, and we were going to get sober together and do all that. So we had planned a trip, and I had already set my vacation time for October, and not even knowing, that the day I set my vacation time was October 26th, which was 7 months into my sobriety, like actual 7-month celebration date was exactly October 26th, which was the day I scheduled my plane ride. And of course, at that time, I had no idea. So that was definitely spirit led. That was all God orchestrating that. And so in the interim, up until that trip, the relationship fell apart. I chose to stay sober and he did not. And so we parted ways. And so I was really going through like a dual addiction thing, because relationships can sometimes be as addictive with the dopamine as a substance.
Yes.
So it was really challenging, and I'd known this person since I was 15. So it was like a long, convoluted relationship. Anyway, so it was time to let go of that, because I was in pursuing myself and healing and self-betterment. And that was one of the things that had to go. And so as I was getting sober and doing that, I was looking more forward to the trip, and I'd been praying about it. And one of the things I had realized during the course of all of that is that I had been putting that relationship as on a pedestal. I had been putting my addiction or my alcohol use on a pedestal. And my relationship with God had really suffered, because I had my focus on the wrong thing. I was iconizing all these other things. Anyway, so in the pursuit of getting sober, part of the tenet of the 12-step program is to seek a higher power and to turn your life and your will over to the care of God as you understand God. And so I started really re-engaging with that connection in my life. And so I decided to keep this trip and stay with the plan and go on the trip solo. And it's the first time I'd ever, taken a trip outside of the state of Florida on my own. Well, I went to Ohio, but that was different. I was like going to family. But so anyhow, I decided to keep the course of the trip, and a few months in this planning stages up to that, I'd really been praying about it, and I was like, all right, God, I really, and Source, I listen to Esther Hicks a lot too, about Abraham Hicks, and so I call my understanding of God, I mentioned Source a lot, so it was like the creator of the universe as Source, and so I was like spending time with Source, walking the beach, and just praying about this trip, and like, I really want to encounter you. When I go on this trip, I want to see you lead. I want to see how you could unfold my life better than I could even plan it. And so I started talking to God in my quiet time and strolls on the beach. And then I started to get these little signs of like, I called the journey of the butterfly. And so the signs of the butterfly kept popping up everywhere. And I didn't catch on at first, but then I started to notice the synchronicities that were undeniable. And I think I sent you the photo of the butterfly and sky on the beach, which I'll mention in a minute. But so I started putting together these little patterns of noticing butterflies as confirmation points that I was on the right path. And like one day on the beach, I was walking and a lady comes up and she goes, I have a message for you out of nowhere. And she's like, I have a message for you. And she hands me this seashell and it says in the belly of the seashell, it says, Jesus loves you. And I thought, okay, that's yes, of course. And then, but she's handing out these and evangelizing and whatnot. But I flipped it over and they had hand painted a butterfly on it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's cool. And I was like, okay, I see you, God. I was like, all right. And then one of the days I was walking back from the Don Cesar on St. Pete Beach, and which is when I saw that image in the sky. And I have a connection with sunsets and sunrises, and I am in touch with God a lot in that nature space. And so I commune with the spirit, and traveling and in the woods or wherever nature spaces. And so as I'm walking, I'm talking about the trip and contemplating the trip and asking, is it okay to go alone? I don't want to have any fear or anxiety. And, and like, I'm trusting you to plan the trip out. And so I look and I get this sense of peace and I look up in the sky and I see that image of the butterfly that's illuminated and just like shining through the sunset with rays coming out. And so I sent you that picture. Is that not a clear butterfly image?
It is.
And I'm like, I have to take a picture of this. No one will believe me that this was the sign. So anyhow, I just felt very cared for and comfortable and like protected that this is going to be okay. This trip is something I need to do for my soul healing and for becoming the next phase of who I'm supposed to be, in my life walk. So anyhow, I didn't plan a lot of the trip. What I wanted to do was kind of like I was like testing, and like walking in faith and testing Source. And so the only things I planned for my trip to Sedona was and the reason I even picked Arizona and Sedona is because there's this place in Page called Antelope Canyon. And from my early 20s, I was obsessed with this screensaver. It's like that waving canyon sand that was built by water. And so I had always had that on my screensaver. And I thought, you know what? I'm going there. I want to see that with my own eyes. And so that's how I picked Arizona. And then I come to find out one of my best friends is from Phoenix and all these other synchronicities that align, which is super cool. But anyway, so I decided on Sedona and then a trek up to Page to see Antelope Canyon and of course the Grand Canyon. So all I planned for my trip, the most control I had was I planned my round trip flight, of course. I got my car rental just for security for my own, feeling like at least I have wheels if I need to spend the night in a car, I'll have something if I don't have accommodations. And then my AA meetings I went to. I wanted to see, what unfolds with meeting people in recovery who are on a good life path and trying to better themselves in another state. And then I planned a 3-night stay in the middle of the trip in Flagstaff because my uncle and aunt have Wyndham points and they gifted me a stay there. So I had like 3 nights in a hotel but it was a 12-day trip. Other than that, I had nothing planned. It was an open book to write.
That's gutsy.
A story. Yeah,
it takes a lot of courage, but for you, it was because you were connected to Source.
Exactly.
And you knew Source would guide you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yep. Okay.
So, but I spend a lot of time fostering that relationship and fostering that connection. I spend a lot of time in meditation. I make it a point to carve out moments of thought where I'm connecting with Source and basically like acknowledging the spirit in every area of life. And now I've smartened up a lot, and now I make that thought before I make a decision instead of after I get into trouble, and then I'm like cry, and then I'm like, oh my God, help, get me out of this.
Yeah.
And but now I premeditate connecting with God and having the Spirit lead. Especially after this trip, this trip was such confirmation that I can trust, I can step out in faith. I don't have to have a plan. And honestly, it worked out. It was a mind-blowing trip. There's so many synchronicities, so many cool things. I'm not even going to be able to tell them all in 1 hour, but I'm going to highlight some of the cool stuff that I feel is appropriate for this session. But anyhow, so I get okay, so we take off 7 months into sobriety on October 26th. Had no idea that was going to work out that way, but was pleasantly surprised, sitting on the plane and reflecting and like, oh my God, you're so good. This is so cool. Because my heart's still healing in the interim because I left that relationship that I thought was like my soulmate life partner or whatever. So I'm like wounded. And so I was like, I'm going to throw him off the canyon and leave him there, It's emotionally like.
Emotionally, right.
This is the thing I'm doing. Figuratively, I'm doing a ceremony here. But anyway, it was all about me and my connection with God at this trip. So it was super cool. And then other people that are in program and stuff. So anyway, I get to Phoenix. I flew in. I have to remember what day it was. But anyway, my very first thing that I did was sought out an AA meeting because I figured who better to hang out with and like learn from and figure out what's good to do locally than the locals at an AA meeting. Plus, I felt safe there. And so my first meeting it was a speaker meeting, and he talked about his addiction and to substance. It was a co-ed, like alcohol and substance. And he had talked about his struggle, and he mentioned the Superstition Mountains. And I had heard about them in the past, but as I had planned for the year upcoming to this trip, everybody mentioned all these other places I should visit, Scottsdale and the Mesa and like all of these other cool places and the Grand Canyon and, Antelope Canyon. But no one ever mentioned the Superstition Mountains, which I thought was interesting because he brought it up at the meeting and said that he had had a spiritual experience there. And it pricked in my spirit. It just dropped. And I was like, I had to pay attention to that because my awareness was heightened. My senses were heightened. I was really locked into what he was saying. And then I became curious about the Superstition Mountains, and it was only 45 minutes east of Phoenix. And so I was like, I'm going to go there. I want to see what that's about. I have a little bit of time before I have to head north up to Sedona. So I did. I went to Superstition Mountains the following day. Absolutely beautiful. It turned out to be a full moon, which
Oh,
I have a
perfect.
I know I love full moons. And I went to Superstition Mountain, and as I was standing there, this is remote. It's 45 minutes outside of Phoenix, and there's nothing around. It's basically desert mountains. And so I'm standing there gazing upon these mountains, and this guy pulls up, this older dude in a beat up like El Camino, you know, and I'm thinking to myself, out of all the places, like, does he really need to be here right now? Like, this is my space,
What are you
like,
doing in my
this stuff.
space?
Yeah, I'm like, I kind of drove down this old dusty road, and anyway, so he pulls up, and he gets out, and he has this monocle. And he's like looking through at the mountains through this, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, Then I got jealous because I was like, oh, he's got something he can see closer, and I was like, all right. So anyway, of course, we're the only two humans there, so we end up making eye contact and connecting, and come to find out, the man's got like 50 some years of sobriety. He knows Bill. He's all about the program. He's telling me all the history of the Superstition Mountains and how this trailer community lived there, and he grew up there as a little boy. And like, I got this fantastic backstory of like the localist of the locals. And so I was just stunned by that. And then, oh yeah, this is a sweet story. Thank you, Lord. So, anyway, so he proceeded to tell me more about this old gold mining town right around the corner. And he's like, oh, you should stop in there and go visit. Of course, I didn't have this plan, didn't even know about it. And so he's like, you should stop in there. And I was like, all right, I'll go after I'm done here at the mountains. And I did go into the park for Superstition Mountains and watch the, moonrise. And anyway, so I did. I went over to the gold mining town, and it's a touristy place, of course, but they had this cute little mining trough where you get a bag of dirt
Right.
with
Yep.
gems and stuff in
Mm.
it, and then you go in and do this panning. And so, when I was a little girl, I have a whole story I could tell about my dad and a relationship there that was a broken relationship. But one of the things when I did live with him for a portion of my life in North Carolina in Saluda, we used to go panning, like real
Mm.
panning,
Mm-hmm.
and we would dig our own dirt. We would have our own pails, and then we would go to these panning stations and do this. And so I used to get gems and rocks and do all this rock tumbling, and I loved it. I had a passion for it. And then, of course, I lost it. That was before I, started drinking at 11. And so I lost that passion, totally forgot about it even. But it was something that I cherished, that I loved doing with my dad. Oh, I don't want to cry. Oh, okay.
It's okay. We have time.
So anyhow, so I happened upon this gold rush town from this man I should never even have met, because I didn't even know about the Superstition Mountains unless I went to that AA meeting. So all these things are connecting the dots. And so anyway, I go over to this gold rush town, and they have that panning mining little thing there. And so I'm looking all around. They've got this beautiful Suarez cactus and just all these lovely things. And so I walk into they also have like this prickly pear drink. And so I went into one of the watering holes there, and what drew me in was the prickly pear, because that was one of the things that my ex and I used to always drink and get drunk on, was the prickly pear drink. And this one was an A version of it. It was just the prickly pear juice, and that was the specialty. So I walked in, and I was talking to the girl behind the counter, and like, I just felt this heaviness over her spirit. And so I ordered this, and I was kind of making conversation with her just to kind of bring some joy and a little cheer, hopefully. And so we got to talking, and she says, "Okay, well, I'll bring this out to you." I told her why I ordered that, and I was like, I'm in recovery, and this is like I'm redeeming these activities, I'm doing the healthy version of all these things. And so she said, "Okay, well, I'll bring it to you when it's ready." So I'm sitting outside, and she comes up and brings me the drink, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "You know, I'm really not." And she's like, "I've really been struggling with addiction and struggling with substance abuse." And so we got into this deep conversation about her situation and how she's been fighting it and having a hard time with it. So I was able to have that moment of, that was a divinely orchestrated
Of
event.
course, yes.
I could not have ever found that girl or anything. So
Or even noticed that she wasn't okay, right?
right, exactly. It's just listening to the inner promptings of the spirit and inner guidance system. And so we had this beautiful conversation. And I was just like, wow, that was a blessing, my whole trip, it was just worth it. Just the whole trip was worth that alone. But that was just one little tiny thing. And then after talking with her, having a beautiful time, then I go across the street to the panning company and I bought this bag called the mother load, which also has a funny comical connotation because I used to have a strained relationship with my mom. Part of the reason I started drinking. And so I just thought it would be funny. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get the mother load, And so I want to get that and see what's in it. And so anyway, I ended up, it was just like $35 or something. It was super cheap. But anyway, I go through the panning process and basically just really for nostalgia's sake and just to be like, hey, and my dad passed away a couple years ago too, and I never got to reconcile with him. But so anyway, I was kind of using that as like a little moment of, hey, dad, and doing this panning thing, and it was like this little also a form of healing for myself in that relationship, even though he's passed from his organics. I feel like we still can connect spiritually. I feel like with people,
Yeah, we're only a breath away.
Right. Oh, thank you for saying that. That's right.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Here's a fact. The longer a website takes to load, the lower its conversion rate is. What you probably don't know is that a 1-second delay in a page load can result in a 7% reduction in conversions. And if you reduce a page load time by just 100 milliseconds, it results in over a 1% increase in conversions. Improving website speeds directly impacts lead gen, rankings, and overall sales. Are you complaining about your website's performance? Contact Name and Creative today at info@nameandcreative.com or visit our website at nameandcreative.com to learn how we make sure our clients' websites are running smooth.
Welcome back.
So anyway, I go through that and do the mother load and do the panning thing, and I got this giant amethyst.
Oh.
Yeah, it was huge. It was really weighty. It was like probably would have cost a lot of money in a store, So I was like, yeah, it was worth it. And then I ended up giving that to my mom when I got back. But so that was just like one of the things that led me to just being open to the prompting and the leading of the Holy Spirit, And so that was just after that, the rest of the trip was like when I went to Sedona. When I drove into the city, I drove in at sunrise. And that part I planned it that way because I really wanted to see the canyons with the sun rising upon it, and it was so magical. I did. I wept when I came in, and then I looked for another AA meeting there, and I found a place called the Peace Place. And so when I went to my meeting there, the night before was one of the only nights where I did not end up with sleep with housing accommodations or a hotel accommodation. But that's why I got a nice SUV, is I wanted something somewhat luxurious if I had to spend the night in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the night before going into Sedona, I ended up spending the night in a Walmart parking lot, and that was awful. It was so uncomfortable sleeping in the back of that Rogue. But now looking back, reflecting on it, it's like I think I needed to have that experience so that I was willing to accept the offer that came the next day. And so when I went to this AA meeting, it was at this place called the Peace Place, and they do a lot of crystals and they do yoga there and meditation. It's like a meditation center. And so anyhow, I was also, still seeing the signs of the butterfly. And when I walked into the Peace Place, when I went into the foyer, they had this magnificent giant amethyst geode cracked open and on display, and it was cracked. It was in the shape of butterfly wings, like right in front of the doors of this AA meeting. And I was like, oh, I see you, God. I was like, okay.
Uh-huh.
I was like, all right, I'm supposed to be here. And then there were some other little signs too. They had a water fountain out front that had a bunch of pennies at the bottom. And I thought, that is so strange, these pennies there. I'm like, that is so funny. And so the correlation is that with the ex relationship, one of the two dogs, Copper and Penny was really sweet. And I had a good relationship with the puppies, and so that was one of the things I'd missed. And so her name was Penny, and she was a red Vizsla. And so anyway, I'm looking in the fountain, and of course I see the pennies and I think of Penny, and I'm like, oh, this is so healing. And I see the butterflies. And so we go into the meeting, and I had spent the night in the car the night before, and I walk in, you take your shoes off. And so I'm at the meeting host, and then another lady sitting in there. And I walk up to her, and they're like, oh, where are you from? And I start telling my story from St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm vacationing, on a sojourn, da, 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 da. And she asked me some questions about my trip, and I had mentioned that I'm just kind of going spirit led and stayed in the car last night. Anyway, her name was Penny. And I mean, how often I don't meet a lot of women named Penny in my regular, goings in life. And so anyway, her name was Penny, and I told her a little about my story, and I said, she's like, well, where are you staying tonight? And I was like, well, I don't know yet. I'm just going with the spirit. And I'm like, I'm just going floating on the wind. And she goes, well, I have a spare room in my condo. You're staying with me. And oh my God, it was amazing. So I'm laughing. It's so good. And she's a sound healer, and she's like, there's this beautiful soul. She's local from there. And so I had this great experience. We're still friends. I made a great friend out of it. She took me to Boynton Canyon and had a lot of cool experiences with her. But anyway, so, and so that was all birthed out of going to another meeting in a place where didn't know anybody. And I ended up leaving with friends at the sign of the butterfly. So it was like, God was all over it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you asked for the signs. You asked in advance. And I think that comes from, for me, it comes from, I believe, but there's always that little, like, could you confirm that for me, God? Could you help me know that this really is what I'm supposed to be doing? And so you asked for that, and then the butterflies showed up the whole way and before you got there, right?
Mm-hmm. And I
Is that
believe, oh yeah, before
yeah, and
we
it's
got there, there was
confirmation.
this
Is it
beckoning.
confirmation for you too when you see that?
Yeah, and not only is it confirmation and it creates a sense of peace that it's okay to trust, but what it does is it beckons me forward, and it actually created a sense of excitement and wonder, and like, that wanderlust of like, oh my gosh, what could be in store? Because I have always heard stories of people trusting their inner guided system, or like Esther says, their God positioning system, and being in tune with source, and that knowing all like good things are planned for me. But sometimes I'm like, yeah, but can it happen to me? I mean, like, but yes, it can. And so it's an excitement and kind of like this beckoning. I equate it with like this romanticizing me to a higher calling and like a higher version of myself, to these beautiful experiences that I can feel safe in. And, because sometimes it's okay to trust something we can't see with the naked eye. And that is an interesting thing, because every thought is a vibration, and everything that we see with our eye in creation was a thought first. And then it was a word, and then it was an action, and then it was a manifestation of the reality. And we always say seeing is believing, but that's not true. Believing is seeing.
Right.
And that's not what we're taught, but that I think is because I think that that's a little bit fear-based, possibly, just because, we're not conditioned and trained and programmed to think with our mind and believe that we can do and have and see all that we can think or imagine, and that we have a creator that shows us the way.
Yes.
So yeah, it definitely was a court. I mean, the word that's coming to mind is like this courtship.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
you were seeking a relationship.
Yeah,
So the courtship makes perfect sense.
that is fun. Yeah, and I did. I was longing for my soul to be loved in that relationship that I had that with that human. And that's what I was really seeking, is for my soul
Mhm.
to be loved. And
Yeah.
I thought that a human being would be able to provide that to me. But yet this trip showed me that my source and my connection with that higher power is really where I find my value and my love. And also it was a process of teaching me self-love too, to see I am capable. A lot of people are afraid of solo travel, but you don't have to be afraid of it, because basically a city is a city is a city. The grid in the system is set up the same. It's just like, are you confident in your own city? Can you navigate from point A to point B to C? And then, and yes, the answer is I can feel safe any journey I take for these reasons. And it was just a reinforcement of the truth of being led, and also and it's okay to understand that I also have power. Like, I have a part in this. It's not just like, blindly like trusting some, spirit that we can't define.
No, it started with your thought. It started with the thought that you wanted to create a relationship with source, higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, and that you were going to seek that out. So that took action. And then the thought of trust. Well, if I'm going to have a relationship, I mean, any relationship is based on trust, mutual trust, right? And so, of course, that's what it is. And I think it's absolutely beautiful that God was courting you, because any proper partner should court you, right? And then it taught you how valuable you are.
That's what I want.
Yes.
And as you're speaking, what's coming to my mind is like, I'm aware of this, but I'm seeing it now in real time, is that I was seeking a relationship also with the spirit, but I was also seeking a relationship with myself,
Of course.
and just a deeper understanding of that. It's okay to be an individual and be autonomous, and it's the most important, in my opinion, to be whole first before coming to another person to try to become, two pieces of a whole. And so it was a time of like really God showing me how to fall in love with myself and to appreciate myself and to have a standard, and not let someone treat me the way that the past person, and, to tolerate someone else's bad behavior in the name of love, and like maybe really understanding what a true healthy love looks like, as
Right.
opposed to an emotionally dysregulated, dysfunctional, codependent situation.
Most of us do not understand what love really is. So we have time for one more story on your sojourn. So tell us something else that happened that was just fantastical for you.
Oh, okay. Well, this was one of the coolest things. Okay. Sorry, this is
And no, it's
definitely
good.
like, yeah. Um, okay, so the middle portion of the trip, when I stayed in Flagstaff, which is an amazing city, it's a dark city. I don't know if you know about that, but it's an international dark sky city. So they preserve, the stars and astronomic scope there,
Oh,
because the
no.
Lowell Observatory is there, and they have like six of the most high profile telescopes in the country.
Interesting.
And it was the first dark sky city in the world, actually. So anyway, but on the surface, Flagstaff doesn't really seem like it has all that much to offer as far as tourism and activities, and it really doesn't, except it has a little observatory there, and I'm an astronomy nerd, so I love that. And then I did go to an AA meeting there also. But the nice thing was that their Wyndham Resort is gorgeous, and it was like this apartment. It was luxury. It had wood and granite and, dark cabinets, and it was really nice. And it was a gift from my uncle and my aunt. They let me use some of their points for this trip. So, and that was also, it just gave me a sense of security that I would at least have a couple of warm showers for the trip, that I didn't, since I didn't plan anything. And so, I had been in the practice of waking up in the morning and spending time. I was reading the Bible. I was reading another meditational book. And then I was spending time in meditation in the morning. I was waking up at 5 a.m. and sitting at the counter, sitting at the table, having a cup of coffee and like really fostering that time. And so after that, that morning was done. I was like, okay, God. I was like, well, what are we doing today? Because I had a free day. The Flagstaff is a perfect place to station if you are wanting to go to the Grand Canyon, because it's only an hour drive from there, and you can like make it back and forth in the day if you want to explore Grand Canyon for a couple days. So anyway, I woke up and I was like, okay, what are we doing today? And I felt that
Talking to God.
yeah,
Okay.
I was talking
Yeah.
to God, like
Right.
he was, like God was there. Sometimes I say he, sometimes they say source. I think I say he just because I like to identify with the masculine because it was something lacking in my childhood. So I always, and I think that's how it shows up for me.
Mhm.
And that's the other thing. I think that source shows up for us individually, how we can relate to source and what's sweet and kind to our hearts and minds and spirits where we identify,
Yeah,
So
that
it meets
makes
us
sense.
where we're at, basically.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I'm like, okay, so what are we doing today? Where are you taking me? And just being funny about it. But anyway, I had the unction to pick up the entertainment and activity travel guide. And so I'm flipping through, and I mean, obviously I'm going to see the Grand Canyon, but I don't know. I'm open. I don't have expectations set. And so I'm looking through the guide, and I open it up and I see this plane, and the outfitter is called Papillon, which is butterfly in French. And I love French. It's one of the things I study on. It's one of the languages I study on my Duolingo.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God. I said, I guess we're taking a plane over the Grand Canyon. And
Oh.
so I looked, and so it was this combination of 8-seater plane over the Grand Canyon with a perimeter Jeep tour afterwards for sunset. And I was like, oh my God, my heart was like leaping because this speaks to my soul, I was like, oh my God. And so I'm like, I just got excited. I was like, I could have planned that, but
Well, you would not have known to plan it,
well,
right?
yeah, I didn't know what was really available to me or how I could see this. But it was like, I love plane riding. I would love to be a pilot. Anyways, and it was intimate, only 8 people, so it was like, wow, it's super cool. So anyway, I said, that's what we're doing. And it was like $179. It was ridiculously cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It's very inexpensive. So I was like, all right. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's what we're doing. So I like geared up and drove over there and had the most amazing experience. My first initiation to the Grand Canyon was in a plane looking over the canyons and just awestruck at this magnificent creation. And like, of course, I wept. I was like tear rolling down,
Yeah.
and just
From a business called Butterfly.
yeah, from an outfitter called Papillon. And I'm like, this is the sign. This was it was the sign of the butterfly trip. And basically and there was, many more after that to come. It was a long trip. I went oh my God, just one more.
Okay.
When I went to Page, so one of the things I was trying to plan was a hot air balloon ride. And I didn't know if I should take a hot air balloon ride over the Grand Canyon or wherever. So I drive up to Page, where Antelope Canyon is. Let me remind you that was the screensaver that I had since I was like early 20s to go and see this. So I go to Page and I stay there. I did go to I went to an AA meeting there too, where someone told me about Big Water in Utah, where I saw the Grand Escalante and had basically a past life regression experience with God at that place. But that's another story.
That's another
That'll
podcast.
take a long time. That'll take another time. But that Grand Staircase Escalante is like prehistoric. You can feel it. You feel the energy of the bowels of the earth. Anyway, so I go up to Page, and the hot air balloon thing was something I was trying to orchestrate for myself. And so I get to Page, staying there. This, not only did they have hot air balloons right, it was the National Hot Air Balloon convention that happens every year in Page in November. I was there. And so I woke up in the morning, I go out on the lawn, it's at the golf course there. I see all these balloon pilots and people blowing up their hot air balloons of all kinds. And so I'm just like, this is so much better than I could have even planned to try to get up and like pay someone to take me in a hot air balloon. And so the lady says, yeah, if you want to go up, all you have to do is wake up early in the morning, go to the volunteer tent. They'll take you up. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so insane. So anyway, I hung out while they all like launched and took a lot of videos and pictures and stuff. And really that was enough for me because I had already planned that day for my kayak trip from Horseshoe Bend, because it was also a dream of mine to take a kayak trip on the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Lee's Ferry that day. I'd already booked it. Went to Lee's Ferry. They ferried us up the river to Horseshoe Bend, which is also astonishing natural wonder. And then I kayaked down the Colorado River back to Lee's Ferry by myself in a 4-hour float. And I saw wild horses on the canyon side. I could just go on and on and on about these magical things that happen.
Yeah, that weren't always planned, right?
No, they were. They were a surprise to me. And you know what? That is just like a loving creator.
Yes.
That's a loving God to know the desires of my heart and to show them to me unexpected and just unfold them better than I could have planned. So, I trust it now. So like just,
Good.
take my life, lead it, do it, do cool stuff with it. And that's like your story with your first podcast that I listened to. I was overjoyed listening to your podcast because it's super inspirational and you had a lot of, those synchronistic moments where God showed up and very cool.
Yes.
Orchestration.
It is. And the master planner, the master creator. And when we actually free ourselves enough to put ourselves in his, her, its arms, that the miracles unfold moments by moment and day by day. And you're a perfect example of having that trust and that faith and taking the action. And there had to be a little bit of like, is this right? Is this okay? And it was probably momentary because you would get a sign.
Guessing, questioning, yeah.
Yes, but we're still human. And then so you've helped our listeners understand the beauty of and the process of what happens when we do put our lives and our cares and our plans in the hands of the higher power of our inner guidance system or higher voice, whatever you want to call that. And Keyla, I just have to tell you, you're a beautiful spirit, beautiful soul. I love your stories. I'm hoping you'll write a book about it, if not a short story about it, and so the rest of us can enjoy it for time to come. So we're going to wrap up. Is there a way, would you like the listeners to find you on any of your social platforms?
Well, I really haven't established any social platforms for this type of content, but I'm Native Soul Co. On Instagram. It's NATIVESOL, like the sun, and so Native Soul Co. and CO at the end. But I'm happy if people want to reach out for a conversation or, just to talk about that, anything about spiritual stuff or just direction or manifestation. And yeah, you hit on it when you said freedom. It's really about that freedom from the ego and freedom from fear and self and not feeling good enough. And there's a lot there. So yeah, I'm always happy to connect with people. If I can be an influence for change in people's life, that's what I'm here for. So that's what my journey is about.
Well, you have expressed it wonderfully today and very excitedly. And I love that you were courted and you had surprises and experiences and people that you met, and it's all divinely orchestrated. So thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, I'm honored you had me, Carol. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I look forward to pickleball, maybe tomorrow morning.
Yes, we'll have to put that together. So I just want to close out. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. You can reach out to me at carol@themiraclelady.com. You can find me on Facebook at Carol Jones Hasbrouck and on Instagram. I'm taking my book, 10,000 Miles of Miracles, available on Amazon. I'm taking it on the road. So let me know if you need a dynamic speaker for your group to help you start following your inner guidance system. I will share the entire journey of how I followed my inner guidance system and the miracles I experienced because of doing that. I'd love to hear from you. Please reach out and remember to make today a miraculous day.